I've asked Imam Lutfi to just recite the verse for us so that we can hear the Arabic intonation of the verse that is being labeled as the cause or the reason why one gender can take it upon itself to hurt another gender.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا إن الله كان عليا كبيرا وإن خفتم شقاق بينهما فابعثوا حكما من أهله وحكما من أهلها إن يريدا إصلاحا يوفق الله بينهما إن الله كان عليما خبيرا.
Men are the protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has given the one more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. Therefore the righteous woman and devoutly obedient, therefore the righteous women are devoutly obedient, and guard in the husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. As to those women on whose part you fear disloyalty and ill conduct, admonish them first. Next, refuse to share their beds. And last, beat them lightly in brackets. But if they return to obedience, seek not against them means of annoyance. For Allah is most high, great, above you all.
We recognize that there has always been gender, which is a social construct about the understandings of masculinity and femininity in culture, but we haven't used it as a means to interrogate even the actions in the culture or the language in the culture and the implications of those actions, i.e. experience, and language, i.e. communication, on the possibilities of living as a being with full human dignity and equality before Allah. That is a new aspect of research. Everybody is located in experience, and that all of those experiences are valuable. And so it is not sufficient for me to try to understand what I may have researched doing just theoretical and theological or exegetical, tafsir work in the Quran. That doesn't bring me complete understanding, but I must also live and I must also relate to other people who are living, because those realities have an impact on understanding. And again, I will show you specifically with this verse why that is important and how it works. This is not a verse written for women. This is not a chapter written for women and called women. The entire Quran is for women. This chapter happens to be called Nisa, and the process by which the chapters were given their names is that a key word discussed within it was referred to by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "As-surah alladhi tuqra fiha an-nisa." The surah in which, Nisa is mentioned. And what I want to show here are 4 tiers of understanding And these are tiers of understanding which I will describe in their chronological development, as well as what I perceive of as levels of awareness, human dignities, and the like, given the development of those humans that were created by Allah. We are created by Allah as human beings, but we're not static. So there have been some changes. For example, the changing in the conception of the idea of gender as a category of thought is a change. It did not exist in the time of the revelation of the Quran. It did not exist in the development of the first stages of Islamic practical thinking. By that I mean fiqh, that is the jurisprudence of trying to understand Sharia, the way towards Allah. Gender was not a category of thought. Women existed, men existed, women loving women and men loving men existed. We have evidence of that. But gender as a category of thought was not a tool for how things were constructed, and for sexuality, and that's clear that we need to develop that more. First 300 years, in fact, I think you could go as far as the first 400 years of Quranic analysis or exegesis, which, just as a reminder, is simultaneous with the development of other disciplines of Islamic thought, like the development of jurisprudence. That took about 300 years after the death of the Prophet, and the hadith and the hadith sciences, as well as Sirah and Nabawiyah, the compilation of the story of the life of the Prophet. All of these fields of what we call the Islamic intellectual sciences were being developed in those 300 to 400 years, as well as simultaneously the fields of medicine, physics, metaphysics, astronomy, medicine. We were prolific in following the commandment of the Quran and of the Prophet with regard to learning. So therefore we excelled in the world in terms of the fields of science. And lo and behold, look at Muslims now, we are in the back. And there are reasons why we're in the back, most of them political, but a few of them are also, I think, spiritual, psychological, so we need to get on the ball. In fact, there is a new publication out, one that was very painful for me to read, but that was only because she was so thorough in her research over the classical fiqh responses to the notion of what we consider as domestic violence today. And her book is called Domestic Violence in the Islamic Tradition. And her name is Aisha Chadauri. The book is available, so I think you should get it, because we need to know thoroughly what has been happening in order to be able to be in conversation with it, and also in order to get, I hope, where I'm going to show you where I have gotten by the end of this presentation. So they took this for granted, that a man could hit a woman, and there was total acceptance. She showed that there's no evidence of anyone who made any exception to the total acceptance that a man can hit a woman. The only thing that they talked about, two things that they talked about, which were kind of important, was how big a stick you could use to hit her with, how many times you could hit her, and because the the verse does say, in takhafu, if you fear nushuz, they did spend a certain amount of time trying to discuss what is nushuz, usually translated as a woman's disobedience to her husband, but I contend that because nushuz is used in a verse about 100 verses after this one, for 128 or 127, I think it's 128, and it says if a woman fears from the shoes from her husband, then the word cannot mean a woman's disobedience to her husband, because you can't grammatically say if a woman fears a woman's disobedience to her woman's disobedience to her husband from her husband. Well, that doesn't make sense. So the shoes has to mean something else, but again, I'm not going to elaborate on it. I only want you to understand that in their consideration that yes, this is not only possible and permissible, it is also required. It is in the command form. By the command form, we mean the difference between a suggestion, a recommendation, or a description. All these forms exist in the Quran. This one is in the amr form. It's a direct command. And whether or not you could hit with a certain kind of stick or a certain kind of whip, and what the evidence was to support whether or not you could hit her with different types of sticks and whips. It hinged upon the discussion about nushuz. And they also differed in terms of whether or not a man had to prove his suspicions of nushuz. Did he have to have evidence that the wife was nashiza or not? And there were degrees of the proof that he had to have. Some cases it was sufficient for him just to be suspicious. So she didn't have to do anything. All he had to do was say, oh, she blinked her eyes twice, that's nashiza, and I can beat her. I mean, that's actually what happens in the fiqh. So I want you to understand very clearly what that means.